Jubilee comes our way, it means God Almighty, through various agencies that apply directly or indirectly to our lives and our situations, God has given us a second chance. So whenever we hear Jubilee, God has given us a second chance, biblically. Now I know people celebrate birthdays, wedding anniversaries. It's our silver jubilee, it's our golden jubilee. As a church, Abiding Word is about celebrating 25 years. It's like a dream. It's a jubilee. Some people are 60 years old. It's their diamond jubilee. Some people have been married for 60 years. It's their diamond or ruby or something wedding anniversary. And sometimes it's like, wow, we've gone so well. But the real thing about jubilee is that God opened the floodgates and said, you are free again, free to live again. You have been given a second chance. I have been given a second chance. I want to look at somebody's life in the Bible and use that as my backdrop, and then I'll continue speaking. The young man called Joseph in the Bible had an interesting life. He was gifted by God in the area of dreams. As a young boy, he dreamt things, but he couldn't understand them. He was 17, according to the Bible, in the first book of the Bible, Genesis, chapter 37, from verse 1 down to verse 11. Joseph was 17 years old. Maybe he will be in upper 6 now, or grade 12, or grade 13, if he started school at 4 going to 5. In my day, he would probably be in upper 6, getting ready to go to university, or he would probably be in a preliminary stage in the university. And so at that age, you really don't know everything. You think you know, but you do not know. You're just a teenager. And so he realized that he was having dreams. And he told his dreams. He wasn't able to weigh them to know whether he had to tell them, whether he had to wait for them to come to pass, whether they would annoy people who heard them, whether they would give him an air of superiority over other people, especially his brothers, because Joseph eventually was one of at least 13 children. There were 12 boys and 1 girl, at least. And so you're in a family of 13 children, and you have a dream. And this was his dream from verse 5. I'll read from Genesis chapter 37 and verse 5. But I just want to make note of verse 2 that says, Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding his father's flock. So he was 17. He was upper 6. It says, now Joseph had a dream. Again, Genesis, the first book of the Bible, chapter 37, verse 5. Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. The even more is a second level of hatred, because he was the kind of brother that went to tell his dad and mom what his bigger brothers were doing, his older brothers. Maybe they had girlfriends, or they went to the corner and they were smoking bantiyomba or one of those kinds of things, and it's like, wash their mouth quickly and they will steal from the pot. And Joseph was just like a last born who was Mr. Killjoy. He would just release every information. So they didn't like him. As if that was not enough, his father loved him, because he was that child that came in his father's old age. So he was almost like a grandchild, even though he was a child. So the father sewed him a coat that was multicolored. And maybe another time we'll talk about parents showing favoritism to certain kids, because, as you know, if you are aware of the Bible, when the flood came and Noah was delivered by God, the animals went into the ark by pairs. And the tortoise got there, the turtle got there, the snail got there. And they did not get there as fast as the rabbit, the cheetah, the hare, the gazelle, the deer, the fox, but they got there. Because sometimes some people are faster than others, but everybody will get there if they keep the focus. So sometimes parents have their favorites, because this one looks like he's more inclined towards academia, and this one is just noisy, playful, doesn't look like he's organized. But, sometimes later on in life, the shock is that the one that looked disorganized becomes the one that's really the winner in the family. So Joseph's father, whose name was Jacob, showed favoritism, as it were, to this boy. But as if that was not enough, Joseph had dreams. So he would tell his brothers his dreams. And this is one of the dreams he told them in verse 6. It says, please hear this dream, which I dreamt. We were binding sheaves in the field. Then my sheaf arose. You know, like when you harvest coos or rice, you know, the bundle that you tie together and you can hold, that's like a sheaf. And it says, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and your sheaves stood all around my sheaf and bowed to my sheaf. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that dream. It means I'm going to be greater than all of you. I am younger than all of you, but you would all bow to me. And so his brothers asked him, does it mean you think you are going to reign over us? Are you going to have dominion over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. And the hatred was not an inner hatred. It showed the way they responded to him and all that. So he should have been able to know that, you know, my big mouth has caused me some trouble. Let me keep quiet. He gave them another dream in verse 9. He says, I still dreamed another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars. That means my father, my mother, and my 11 brothers all bowed to me. I mean, this young boy saying that he dreamed that his father would bow to him, his mother would bow to him, his 11 brothers. So hereafter, it says Joseph's brothers envied him in verse 11. But his father kept the matter to his heart. His father knew that this could be true, because after all, God can do anything. God chooses people. He doesn't ask our opinion when he makes his choice, because he makes his choice according to the counsel of his will and his foreordained plan and purpose for your life and my life. Yet we have to align ourselves in that direction, by the way. And so his brothers envied him. And if you're aware of this story, if you follow, just read from Genesis 37, 38, 39, 40. Joseph is thrown into a pit. You know, he's sold into slavery, into Egypt. He works for a man whose wife likes him. He doesn't like the wife. She schemes and tells a lie that he wanted to proposition her and sleep with her. He gets into jail. He gets into trouble. And finally, after some 13, 14 years, in Genesis chapter 41, that's like 14 years after something happened, it says, the king dreamed a dream and wanted an interpretation. And one of his two men, called the butler, who had been in jail with Joseph, remembered that, wow, when we were in jail, there was a young Hebrew boy who interpreted a dream that I had, and the dream that the other man, the baker, had. And he's still there. So the king said, well, call for him. And Joseph was brought before the king. And when he came, the king told him the dream. The king is Pharaoh, you know. And in chapter 41, verse 15, it says, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. But I have heard it said that you are the one that can interpret a dream. You can understand the dream and you can interpret it. Now listen to Joseph's answer in verse 16, Genesis 41. In verse 16, it says, so Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me, it is God that will give you the understanding and an answer of peace. So when he was 17 years old, he just spoke. I had a dream, and he spoke his mind, and it got him into trouble. And finally, 13 years later, because he was about 30 now, if you follow this same Genesis 41, you go to verse 46, it says he was 30 years old now. So 13 years later, by which time he has grown, he's developed, he's learned lessons, he's seen the mistakes. When they asked him about dreams, he said, no, it's not me, it is God. And from Joseph interpreting the Pharaoh's dream, he was released. If you like, he had a jubilee. What do you do when you have a jubilee? Because chances are, whatever led you into that situation, be it a temptation, be it a sin, be it whatever it is, those opportunities will come again. So when you come into a second chance opportunity from God, what are the lessons you have learned? What are the lessons I have learned? What lessons are we going to say we've learned as a nation? A pastor friend of mine told me this parable. I think it's probably in the Igbo language, in the Nigerian Igbo language, I'm not sure. But he said in his tribe they have a parable that If you have been playing with fire and you got your finger